Okay, so first off, thank you guys so much for coming to this meeting. I know that, at least I'm on spring break. I know that several of you just got back to work and now you're going back to work again at night. But thank you so much for being here. I am really excited to get to know you guys a little bit and most importantly, kind of walk you through the review process. The first thing that's going to help me the most is if you can let me know in the chat how many years you have been reviewing for. So if this is your first year, that would be we'll do 0 for first year. If you've done 1 year before or one review cycle before, but if you could just put in the chat for me, how many years approximately have you been reviewing? Again, 0 would be this is your first time.
Now, this is materials review or like our state standards and standards?
Materials review.
Okay.
So I'm not used to having to put on Zoom meetings for this. So this is going to be my first time. Okay, so far. All right, so everyone is new except for me. Okay. All right. I do know that they had told me that everybody had been handpicked for this. So that's something that's new this year. Everybody, from my understanding, had a lot of really great reviews, whether from your curriculum specialist, you are a curriculum specialist, and you've worked with the state before. And so that's one of the reasons why it's so new is because we're used to reviewers that have been here for 5, 6, 7 years, but may not be too great. So great that everybody is here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you, hopefully. Okay, there we go. By the way, if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. I do have my phone that has the chat up. And so if you have any sort of questions or anything like that, I'll be able to see those. Hopefully you guys received an email that looks like this. If you want to go ahead and have that open in a tab, hopefully you have a tab. If not, you're on your phone, I understand. But this is all the different things that we are going to go through today. The PowerPoint, which you'll be able to reference later, and then some of the different links that I'm going to show you in just a second. As a reminder, this is our first time ever doing this before in terms of Zoom. And so if I make any mistakes, I apologize. Again, first time for everything. So first off, obviously, welcome. So my name is Melinda Ray. I'm part of the Blue Team Lead. That name is important, which I'll explain in a second. This is my 7th year as a materials reviewer. They did have a little bit of a break during COVID, but I have been doing it now for 7 years. This is my 2nd cycle as a team lead. My last team lead was a little different, which again, I'll explain in a second. I am a 10-year social studies teacher, and I currently teach at Skyline High School. Now, the reason I keep saying why different or my team name is important is because you will notice that none of you are in my department. These are the departments that we are working in, so you should be in one or more of these. We have a couple of you that are in multiple. But again, you will notice that nowhere's on this list is social studies. That is a change from before. One of the problems is that we are in the spring cycle. So the spring cycle is significantly smaller. There's about 68 materials. The fall one, which is significantly larger, is upwards of 300 to 400 materials. So if this ends up working out for you really well and you end up coming back for the fall, we give our recommendations of who would want to come back. But one thing that is different is usually I'm only social studies. And in this case, and I think it's because the reviews are smaller, but also our team lead role has changed a little bit. But one thing again is I don't know your subject as well. And so I'm relying on you guys and your subject knowledge to be able to kind of move us a little bit forward. Couple of things to be aware of just in terms of general success. And one of you, or several of you are dealing with this right now, is patience. This process is requiring a lot of patience, one from you're working with somebody else or multiple people. But second, which is the one that several of you guys are feeling right now, is with the state. So the person in charge at the state level, this is actually their last year, they're retiring this year. The technological divide can be difficult. In addition to prioritizing what is and is not important. So several of you, which I'll show you in a second, have issues that haven't been resolved. And there is a little bit of a lack of urgency sometimes at the state. And so oftentimes it can feel like we're very two separate entities, which we kind of are. So I beg your patience, especially with some of the issues I'm going to bring up today with our review process that we're kind of waiting on the state for. Hard work. So one issue that we have had in the past is not very good quality reviewers. Reviewers that kind of did this because they thought it'd be an easy money. Reviewers who committed and then realized really quickly that they couldn't. And instead of leaving the program, they just kept doing it, which resulted in really poor reviews. So just remember that although most of us are probably doing this for a little bit of extra money, or maybe there's some self-gratification, just try to work hard. And I'll explain what I mean in just a second. And teamwork, which is probably the one that oftentimes is the hardest. You are placed in teams and you do have to work together. Usually every review cycle, one or two teams has a significant amount of conflict. It's usually around one person not doing any work, and the other person doing a lot of work. And so just in general, just make sure that we are working as a team and we kind of have to do what our students do sometimes in terms of group work and different things like that. So before we move on, any quick questions before we start going over the review process? And again, I have the chat up, so you don't have to unmute if you don't want to, or you can. Okay. So let's go through the basics of the review process and kind of how it works. So this is like the official overview. So the purpose of the review process, it does take place twice a year, one in the spring, one in the fall, is to review materials that are submitted by publishers, organizations, and industry partners. It is really important to note that anyone can submit work to the state. And when I say anyone, I really do mean anyone. So you're going to see a pretty significant variety. Most of ours are publishers of textbooks. We have Google that submitted some work. We have some random companies I've never heard of before. But in general, anybody, you could submit work to the state if you wanted to. Every material is evaluated by a rubric. It's designed by the state and it evaluates state law, usability, features, and appropriateness. This one is also really important. All reviews have to be collaborated on in teams of at least two, and that is by state code. The reason why this is important is because several teams already have a drop. So we have two teams that already had people drop over the last 2 days. If the number drops below two in a team, which is why every team starts with three, we do have to find another reviewer. You are not allowed to review on your own. I had a situation last year where several materials, nobody worked on them, so I had to do them. And I still was put into a team because it's required by state law. And then publishers are allowed to appeal any review that is given unless the state board has already intervened. There is one team, it's not our team, that is only reviews. So all they're doing is all the rejected things from fall, and the person has appealed it, and now they have a more thorough. But luckily for us, we don't have to do any appeals. Okay, oops. All right, so here are your teams if you're not aware. My hope is you've already seen this list because it was part of the Canvas course that you were required to do. A couple of quick words about the color coding. So everybody that is in orange is a drop. So those are people who have quit the program. Jason Goebel isn't on the sheet anymore, but Sarah dropped last week and she still is. Just know those people are not involved anymore. Everybody that is in blue specifically reached out to me and said everything is working fine. They can access different materials. Everything that is in yellow, in theory, you sent me something that was a problem. And according to the state, it is fixed. That is as of 4:30 p.m. We will see if that is true or not. Like I said, we have some patients where they will tell me things are fixed and then it won't actually be fixed, but we will see. And then everybody that is in the purpley color are people who have said, I have an issue, but it's currently not resolved. And so whether I emailed the state for you or I emailed you back with some clarification, something is unresolved. And everybody that's in plain, I haven't heard from you about any issues. So really important that you communicate with me if there are any issues so I can resolve them as soon as possible. Oh, one thing to note about these in terms of number of review items, some of you have more than others. You are paid based on each review item. And so even if you're down here on the like one, you'll just be paid for one. But you do get more money if you're like on the team for five. Okay, so we probably don't need to go over this a ton since all of you, unless the people who joined are you're all new. But some things that changed this cycle is we did have a significant pay raise. I don't know what it is for you guys, but it was double for me as a team lead. One of the issues that happened previously is a lot of people felt like they were doing a ton of work for not a lot of pay. My understanding is that there has been a pay raise for everybody. They were able to get several $1,000s from the state to raise everybody's pay, because especially in today's current political cycle, it's very, very important that we review these. So they're hoping for not as many drops because people will feel better about the pay. There is targeted hiring. So we were told that every person in this group was special. You were selected, you were chosen. You were not just asked, usually they send out a Google form to the whole state and say, do you want to join? This is targeted hiring. We do have a lot of improved rubrics, which I will show you in a second. Were required to take a Canvas course. If you have not taken the Canvas course, you must do that before starting into your reviews. This was new this year and they did not say why, but we did have to fill out a conflict of interest form. Never in my 7 years has that happened. And it's usually because something happened last cycle that caused this whole thing to happen. So I'm assuming somebody had a conflict of interest and it caused a problem. And so now we're all required to sign a legal form. You are required to attend a Zoom meeting. You are mostly here. I think we're missing a couple of people. We do have larger teams. This is mostly to accommodate drops. So if 2 people drop in a single team, then it's going to cause more problems. And then changes to the role of leaders, which I'll show you in just a second. So you are a reviewer. And again, if you ever have any questions or clarifications, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. I do have my chat up on my phone. So you are a reviewer. So what does that mean for you? So your job is to review individually a set of materials. That's step number 1. Again, you review individually and then you'll move on to the team. Your review is based on a specific rubric. So it's not free form. It's not how you feel. It's based on a very specific rubric. Reviewers then work as a team to collaborate and discuss the materials. Again, state code does say it must be in a team. It cannot be solo. Review teams will meet in person or Zoom. So this is important. You can't just do email tags back and forth. If you do not have access to Zoom, I am able to set up Zoom. So if you let me know, I can open it and then you guys can just open review and I'll just leave it open for you. And you will all come up with a single review and rubric. That's important. One is submitted collaborating between the two in a system known as RIMS, which we'll show you in a second. And again, ask for help. This is one thing that reviewers have struggled with in the past. Ask for help. You need to ask for help. If there's a problem, ask for help. We have some reviewers that have something struggle. It sits there for a while. I had a reviewer last time that couldn't even access the website. And then it was the day it was due and they said, I can't access the website. Ask for help earlier is better. I am your team leader. Again, my name is Melinda if you joined late. My job is to coordinate teams and responsibilities. I hold the Zoom training. I contact publishers if access issues arise. I already know based on creating this PowerPoint that at least one set of materials we cannot access. That's why it's so important to check access as quickly as possible. Is I need to be able to know if I need to contact the publishers and gain access. Sending updates, reminders, and deadlines. We are on a very short deadline, which I'll show you in a second. And again, I'm available to help any problems or to settle disputes or handle issues, which again, we usually have one team that struggles. Will you be that team? We will see. But usually one team, oh my goodness, last time it was really, really dirty. And one of them was so mad they went to their employer about it, like the other person's employer. Please settle those disputes. Let's try to be able to do with some decorum, and we'll settle disputes as needed. Is there any, again, quick questions or anything like that? I feel like I'm back during COVID, just talking to myself. That's okay. I'm good at that. Okay, so here's what the review process is going to look like. So this is the stuff my hope is that you have done. After this meeting, I will send you an email and I'm going to ask that you personally respond to me and say, yes, 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 yes. Did you do all the above? So first, did you complete your forms? Several of you were on spring break last week, and I've already heard from some of you that they sent you something. You had 24 hours to respond, you didn't, and now it's void. You are not supposed to work at all, including the Canvas course, until that is signed. Let me know if it has expired. My understanding is they have about 30 people in all the review teams that did not sign it. One, you can't get paid, and two, you are not supposed to begin work. So make sure you do that. I'm going to talk about logging into Midas in just a second. Have you completed the Canvas course? Can you view materials? And this is the one that some of you may not have done, is have you connected via email? And again, I will send you after this email or after this meeting, a quick overview to see if you've done all the above. So we're going to go ahead and start by accessing the materials. If you are on a computer, it would be very helpful if you try to access this now, so that we can try to be able to resolve any issues. So in the email that I sent, this should open a direct link. If not, I'm going to show you the old-fashioned way. And again, some people don't even know how to access Midas. This is like the state's professional development thing. So again, you just log in. It should be your school account. But again, if you are a first-time user, I believe you have to go through the state to get that approved. So make sure you can log in. And then you click, if you're here, you click My Profile. And it's going to leave you to your professional learning because that's the whole point of Midas, but we don't care about that. Reviewer materials is where this should be. Okay. Now, this is where people are having problems. So it's going to help me in the chat if you can put yes or no to the following, or if you need more explanation. You should be able to click on bid cycle, and it should come up spring 2025. And then if you click it and press filter, it should look like this. Now, I have way more because I have everybody's. Yours typically will say a single group of authorization, and then it should have materials. If you can do me a favor and put in the chat, yes or no, can you access this? Are you viewing this? Go ahead and put in the chat, yes, no, or if you've done it before. Okay, yes, yes. Looking for everyone. Or it's waiting because you're trying to open it. Because I know this is the part that people have been struggling with. I have two that allegedly should be able to log in. And if you're still trying to work to be able to log in and stuff like that. Okay, great, 9. Yeah, mine says 41 because we're bringing 41 materials. We actually have some of the most out of all the groups. And again, if the answer is no, which right now everybody says yes, if the answer is no, send me an email like now so that I can try to be able to email them. Again, the person of the state is a little slow. Sometimes she emails immediately, sometimes she emails in a couple of hours, but we want to get everybody access right away. Okay, so while I go through the rest of this, I would encourage you to kind of like maybe make my screen half of your screen and the other one this, so you can kind of click through these and play around with it while I start to walk you through how this is going to look, okay? All right, so one of the first things you're going to notice is something that looks like this. So everybody hopefully sees something like this. There's 3 different things that you need to be aware of. The first is view details, which personally, there's no point in clicking on this right now. The reason I say it's no point is that's the submitted final rubric. So that is what it's going to look like on the Midas website for publishers, for schools, etc. So again, you probably don't need that, but that's what the state is going to see. Okay. This is the one that I would encourage you to click on now so you can kind of like scroll through and look at it. So evaluate collection is where you are going to submit your final review. So when I say final review, some of you might make notes on this and different things like that, but that is where you are going to actually evaluate the materials. Now, a couple of important things when you look at this. So mine looks different, by the way, because I've narrowed it down so you can see this. It has the different rubric points. This is where you're going to submit your grade 1, 2, 3, or 4. This is going to be your narrative. Anytime you go and press this button right here, that is going to, well, now it's not going to work, but whoever this is, now you have an F. That is going to be what submits it. So again, as soon as you put like what it's going to be, that is going to be your final thing that gets submitted. So anything you put on here is eventually going to be submitted once it locks. I mentioned that because you have to be careful. You don't want to put in this Worst textbook I've ever read. You can put that in a much nicer way. Just remember that whatever you put here, it's not going to work. Okay. I'm not sure who the Samsung is, but if you will send me a message and you can't see this, feel free to email me if you haven't already. If you're one of the two people that I've already submitted, or if it's still not working, let me know. But yeah, just send me a quick message. But again, everything here is official. That's what's going to come under the actual review. Now, the last part is this bottom part, and this is where it starts to get a little bit much because these are all of your materials. So this is where you access the materials. This is the most common mistake that people make. They're clicking around the whole thing. They don't know how to be able to start it. So what I would do is find one of your materials if you have access. If not, this PowerPoint's available for you, or just watch what we do. Click on any of them. It really doesn't matter which one you pick on. So more than likely, you're going to have something that comes up like this. Again, it'll say who the author is, the publisher, different piece of information. This really is not what we care about. What we do care about is if you will go ahead and scroll down to the sample instructions. Now, some of you will have a great publisher like McGraw who will make it very, very clear what to do. And if you want, you can practice that now where you try to log in, but here's my warning. Again, as I said before, anyone can send in a published material that they want people to review. So you're going to get million-dollar companies like McGraw and Pearson who have these big websites that you go through and it's very clear. And then you're going to have ones, which I'll show you in a second, which literally feel like pulling your teeth out trying to find it. So if you're practicing this now and you get really annoyed, just put that one to the side. Some of you it's easy, some of you it's hard. Once you start logging in and putting in the information, you hopefully will see something like this, where you see, now some of you, it'll be multiple materials, unless you are specifically in charge of career explorations, for example, which I don't think anybody here is. You do not have to review it. You are only reviewing things that you are specifically assigned. So like one of them that I'm going to show you in a second, it has 100 books. No, you are not reviewing 100 books. There's one material that is exhaustive, but I'm going to try to pull you off that cliff a little bit in just a second, okay? So you might have one that's very, very easy. And then you might have one that should have been easy, but it's not. So this is Pearson. Several of you guys have Pearson. Pearson, I launch it, I log in, then I have to scroll, then I have to try to figure out which category I'm in, then I have to go here, then I press sample instructions, then it gives me access credentials, which I had to scroll for because the first is a PDF. Again, sometimes it's not as nice. We are not allowed to review the sign-in process. So again, you can't knock Pearson because their website is awful, unless it's once you access the materials. So if you, by the way, are really struggling with accessing materials, please message me and I'll pull up a Loom, I'll do a screen record, and I'll try to be able to show you what it's going to look like. However, some of you may get an error like this. One of you, this is your material because I was trying to make this PowerPoint and this is what I came across. One, it was sketchy. It made me like create an account, which is a big no-no. Then it said an error. And then when I tried again, it says that it is expired. If any of your materials looks like this, message me ASAP. I have to go and contact the publishers. The rule is the publisher has like 5 days. And if not, we just don't review it. But we have a lot of appeals this time because of how many publishers were like, you guys weren't smart enough to access our materials. So we wanted to appeal it. Most of our appeals this semester is people that we didn't review. So again, if it looks like this or it has an error, let me know ASAP. That's why I always suggest don't review. See if you can access everything before you actually start reviewing. Okay. So what type of materials are you guys going to review? 80% of what you are going to view are textbooks. Most of them are digital. There is no requirement that says they must be digital, but we're in the day and age now that most of the textbook companies are turning to these interactive websites for students. We also might have bundles. I'm looking at you, whoever has the Google one. Yours is a mega bundle with a ton of activities in it. So it's not really like a textbook, it's a bunch of activities. Some of you might have websites where you just go to a website and you're supposed to interpret it. Some of you have books. I don't think I saw anybody, but maybe you do. And anything else you can think of. Why do I point that last one out? One of you has a Canvas course. Never, ever in 7 years have I seen a Canvas course. I don't know if it's any good. It might be the best Canvas course in the world, but apparently we can pay, I think it's $200 a license to buy a Canvas course. But yeah, you might have a Canvas course. You literally have no idea what you're going to get. But again, 80% of you, it's textbooks. Okay. So, really quick, is there any questions I can clarify really fast about like logging in? You're pressing buttons and it's not working, unless you're the one person who said you can't log in, which I did get your email. It popped up on my phone. Okay, all right. So what are you looking for? So again, my hope is you have a material up right now. If it's too confusing that you can't pay attention to both, feel free to close it and you can look at this later. But here are some things you're going to look for as you open them. Most of you, this is a similar screen to what you're going to see, which are called digital textbooks. So digital text. Whoa. Sorry, I put my phone all the way over there. Sorry, I'm trying to watch the comments going through, so I'm not used to having two up. Okay, so anyways, so most of you are going to have something that looks like this. It's an interactive dashboard because it's an interactive textbook. So some of the things you're looking for is, does it look nice? Does it look like you could click on things and know what they are? If you click on things, does it go to what you think that they're supposed to go to? Those different types of things are what you're going to look for. One important aspect is correlation to standards. And so you might find this, it's either usually on the website or if you go back to the review materials. So if I go to click on this, for example, down here, it'll say alignment document, and that will have some sort of a document associated with it. And it's going to usually look like this. So this, according to the textbook creator, is how every single one of these textbooks aligns to 100% of your course. Now I am not your subject, which I've told you that before. I am relying on your knowledge of your subject for whether or not they do or do not align. The most common alignment mistake is a resource that is either too confusing to find alignment, as in I have to search the whole thing to figure out how I'm going to use this, or it is short. So I teach social studies. In Utah, US History 2 starts from 1877 to present, and a lot of textbooks start in 1900 instead of 1877. So I've missed an entire two strands at the state level, so it's not going to work. I've also noticed, so I reviewed an AP textbook last year that said it aligned to every standard, but then like just skipped several standards. We don't want that. You're not required to go and look at every single correlation, but what I usually do is I first see are all of my standards addressed? So is there anything blatantly missing? And two, I usually pick one or two standards. I go to the page that it says I should be at, and then I see, is this actually aligned? Like I've seen ones before, especially when it looks something like this, that it's like the glossary and it references the glossary to achieve the standard. And that's probably not going to work. Most of your interactive textbook options are going to have, as well as like Canvas, whatever, you're looking for options. So is it just a textbook? Like they're giving you a PDF. Is it a student edition and a teacher edition? Most of yours will have both editions. Is it something that has support? Does it have resources? That's a big one. Is a teacher going to be able to use this, create lessons, create activities, etc.? Or is this just a book? Or is this just a video? So one of yours, the Canvas course, at least to me, it was just a set of videos. So is that really something that a teacher could use on a daily basis? Other things you're looking for, especially with the textbooks, is what type of student or teacher resources are available. So for example, in this resource, I can highlight things, I can annotate things, I can make the text bigger or smaller. I can do speech to text. Make sure you look for speech to text or text to speech. That's a really key component of textbooks now, is if they're digital, they got to have some way that I can actually read it to you. You also are going to look for things like a lot of them will have embedded glossaries. So like if I scroll over it, is it embedded or something like this? But some of your textbooks are just textbooks. So this is the print version of the textbook I just showed you. So instead of having this little pop-up, it has the side. Don't knock a textbook solely because it doesn't have the fancy schmancy stuff. But if it's a digital textbook like this, it really should have a lot of supports. That's what they're doing right now is support, support, support. And are they accurate supports? I had one time where it would say something like agriculture or food, and it was like something you eat. And agriculture was like plants, and that's all it said. Is it something that actually can be used by students? All right. Another thing is assessments. So we really want to look for, is there activities? Is there assessments? Not only that, but do teachers have access to the answers? So if it's just a textbook that has an essay prompt, but I as a teacher need to go and work to find that, that's probably not the best option for our resources. A lot of your online stuff also will have assessments. So this is a good example where there's just a ton of assessment. There's word banks, there's digital banks, there is printable tests. Really, you're looking for how much stuff are they providing you. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be something that teachers would appreciate. You also might have interactive features. So sometimes when you click on assignments, it'll say like nothing because you're not a real teacher. But as you click through, like, is there options to submit something? Can you assign something? Sometimes if you click assign, it won't work because we're demoing it. But look to see if those options are available. Any quick questions I can answer about what you're looking for in general? Okay. All right. So, one thing that you might see is this really big word right here of ancillaries. As you scroll down in your materials, you're going to see a bunch of these. They don't matter. Don't worry about them. Don't stress out about them. I think it's just like official stuff, but really they don't matter. This is what you do care about. So these are all the materials you are required to review. So for example, if I go back to my materials, I have to look at all of these options. Now, it's important to note that for most of you, these will all be the same thing. They just vary slightly. So like it's trying to say here that you can buy a print edition of this. You could combo it where you get both a print and an online. You could get only the student. You can buy only the teacher course. But these are all going to be the same textbook. It's just slightly different in terms of how you use it. Or if I look here, the only one that's probably going to be different here is the lab manual. But again, these are probably going to all look, sorry if you hear banging, I have kids, and they're cornered to the upstairs and I'm in the playroom. But this is where it gets more complicated. So these are all different ones that you guys have. Again, this is what you hope for. This is the easiest because they're all the same. If yours looks something like this, though, these are multiple textbooks that for whatever reason the publisher has smashed into one single review. They're not supposed to do that, but they do it sometimes. So if you're doing this, you're looking at all of these. Now, you might find that the 5th grade level one is awful, and now you have to judge it as a whole group based on that one. If you have issues with that, where you have multiple grade levels and you're like, these are way different, then let me know. But then you have something like this. Shout out to my person who has Google as one of theirs. Technically, according to the rubric, you are supposed to go through each of these. Now, the good news is I did kind of look through them and it goes faster than you think. But again, every single one of these blues is technically something that we're supposed to evaluate for the whole thing. So let's talk about how this I have 3 different books from 2 different publishers. Are you only submitting one review as your chart states? So the rule is this is 1. This is 1. So you are submitting one single evaluation for this group of things. So if you have are assigned 3 different resources, so like let's pretend that these 3 are all yours, you would do review 1, 2, and 3. You're not doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There is a big group. And again, most of you, the reviews will be similar. There's a few of you that it's a little bit more complex, and I can walk you through that. It looks like you're good to go. Okay. So yeah, again, if we go back to that chart, the reviewer chart. So again, you're responsible for the amount of reviews that it is here. So that's the number of reviews in total. And again, if you need help, I can walk you through it. I am a big fan of Loom. I love doing screen recordings. Okay, so vetoes. All right, so this is something new this year. So we have a new requirement that there are 4 state laws that we must now comply with. It's not that we didn't comply with state law before, it's that it's much more specific that we must comply to these state laws. Now, the rule is oh, I'm so sorry if you hear banging. I tried to put my headphones in, but they didn't work. So the rule is if any of these happens, whether it's a may, you're like, it might be on the border, or it does, it is an automatic veto. We don't review it at all, actually. So we just insert it as this, you put your little explanation for why, and then we don't do any rubric points. If you have an automatic veto situation, reach out to me and I will clarify with you if it's an automatic veto. So here are the state laws that you are looking for. One is sensitive materials, aka pornographic materials. We all know the state law. It went into law last July. I don't know if you guys had as much intensity as my district did, where we had to sit through a 2.5-hour training. But this is the pornographic materials. I would hope that this group, I highly, highly doubt will have this issue. Art has been the one, and English has been the one that has been the biggest debated in this issue. But again, if you have any concerns, they have this such helpful flow chart, which in my opinion is not helpful whatsoever. The biggest thing is if you think there's pornographic materials, reach out to me and I'll check if it's actually pornographic because I don't know yours. Like, for example, I was thinking this. Some of you are doing ag, several of you are ag teachers. I don't know. Maybe you could put in the chat. I was thinking, like, if there's a whole page of just like animal testicles, I don't know if that violates it or not. But I was thinking of that. That's an animal or not, but it's mostly English and it's mostly art. But I'm not your department, so I don't really know what your version of inappropriate is. Okay, second, constitutional freedom in schools. Basically, what this says is you are allowed to have controversial issues. With our group, I don't see that as a problem. It's mostly social studies and English and science. But you cannot endorse viewpoints. So I read one time that literally the opening tag said, we are a Republican-based company that will show you why Republicans are the best. That's what it said. Okay, now we've violated the state law. You can't do that. You also cannot specifically exclude any religious beliefs specifically to exclude. So again, I don't see this as a problem in this group, but I was reviewing a geography book one time about religion, and it did not have the religion Zoroastrianism, which if you don't know, Zoroastrianism is an African religion. It's probably not included because there's only a few thousand people that practice it. But I read a textbook one time that did not include Islam. And they said they did not include Islam because of current terroristic issues in the world, and it would be inappropriate to do so. Okay, now we have violated state law. Again, it's mostly religion and politics. This is the one out of everything that is the most likely that you are going to struggle with. Your stuff needs to be free from advertising. I didn't fully look at the Google one, but that's the one I'm slightly worried about. I didn't fully look at it. But if, for example, it says, please go buy Google and you can go here, or please click on this link to buy our product, you can't do that. It's also e-commerce. They cannot have in there, thank you for purchasing this. Now go click on this link and purchase a $50 item to make this work. And most important is political interest, which I'm going to show you several examples in a little bit. We cannot have any political interest problems. And then lastly, you cannot have any prohibited discriminatory practices. Although officially, according to the state law, we have no critical race theory. If you've ever heard somebody complain about critical race theory, that's really what this is. So for example, in agriculture, again, I don't know your subject, but let's pretend that there's a section on sharecropping or the diversity of the South in the Reconstruction era and how it increases why we have peanuts and why we're one of the world's biggest peanut exporters in the South is because of sharecropping and specifically George Washington Carver. So let's pretend that you're doing that, and then all of a sudden it says, and if it wasn't for the whites, we wouldn't have sharecropping. You can't do that. Or if it says something like, and today white people should feel bad because of what they did back in the 1800s. You can't have that. Again, I do not see any problems in this subject. Again, it's mostly English and social studies, a little bit of science. We do also have a new rubric point called ethnic studies. Ethnic studies is brand new to the state law. Basically, ethnic studies is saying that we have to identify materials that individual districts can label as ethnic studies, which basically means that you're going to talk about in your material, somewhere in your material, an extensive amount of cultural, historical, social, and contributions to diversity of the world. This is not DEI. That's very important. It's not DEI. It is saying, though, that we do have to talk about diversity. That's a state law now. Every district is required to have, every subject must have a ethnic studies material. And so they're trying to make the process easier by having us identify them. I do not see us identifying many ethnic studies, but for example, if you're the fashion design group and your fashion design textbooks has an entire chapter on fashion of the world and it goes through different ethnicities and the fashions that they use, now it's in ethnic studies. Or maybe in agriculture, your topic goes into, how rice farming differs in certain parts of Asia based on their culture. Now that's ethnic studies. Again, this is in your Canvas thing. The biggest thing is just because they talk about diversity doesn't mean it's ethnic studies. It has to go deep, etc. Again, I don't see us using this, but we will see. This is where an important part of your rubric comes in, because if you're looking at your evaluate collection, you're going to notice that this is not on here. In fact, you're going to notice that none of the rubric points are word for word on there. That is because last week they had them all working. And then I noticed today that they didn't. And I emailed the state and they said it's going to be a little bit. So currently, your evaluate section right here is not the correct rubric. I'm going to show you a correct rubric in a second, but it's not correct. I'm hoping they will fix that tomorrow, okay? All right, other parts of the rubric. Okay, this is where we need you to open up some stuff. So if you go over into the links that I will reference, I want you to click on where it says CTE rubric for evaluation. I will also go ahead and put this into the chat if I can figure out how to put it in the chat. I'm not going to direct message you. There we go. Okay. So I've also put it into the chat if you weren't able to find it. Now, really quick, only put it in the chat if you don't consider yourself CTE. I'm not a CTE person, but I'm pretty sure you're all CTE. It might be naive of me. Okay, nobody's putting anything in chat. If you don't feel like you're CTE, let me know. This is the actual real rubric that should be in RIMS, which is the software system. Why it's not there, I do not know. Notice we have the compliance with state law. Again, you either say it does or does not have it. You can kind of scroll through here. Here's that ethnic studies requirement, but these are what you are specifically supposed to evaluate. Now, if you are wanting a copy of this, you can just press file over on the left-hand side and press make a copy, and that will allow you to have your own personal access to this rubric, but this is what the state will have. It's also really helpful that if you're wanting to do your rubric stuff either on paper or you want to make a copy for each material and kind of like highlight it, it's a really great way to be able to do it. Now, this is a brand new rubric, which means that there are going to be flaws. I am not your department, and I am looking for you to give me feedback if you're noticing that things do not work. So for example, one thing I noticed down here on the bottom is like safety, lab spaces, and lab equipment. I don't feel like everybody in here is using a lab. Like some of you are computers. Maybe, I guess maybe it's a computer lab thing. So maybe it's saying you need a section on how to be nice to computers. I don't know if this is talking about specifically like sewing for you fax people. I don't know. So if you feel like you're looking at this rubric and you're like, this does not work for me, this is something new. We usually just have a generic rubric. But if you're seeing this doesn't work, please message me and I can give that feedback back to the state. But again, in general, these are all the things that you're going to see. So I'm not going to go over a ton. They're pretty self-explanatory. It's gotten so much better. The old rubric, which you can see on RIMS right now, is really bad. I do want to point out one quick thing though, and it has to do with this technical standards area. Um, I'm not a fan of this section, and they said they were going to fix it and they didn't. The biggest problem is if you have like a PDF, how do you evaluate the technical standards of this? Do your best on here. Most of you have digital, but then we have this really weird one about student privacy. And so the biggest thing about that when we get to student privacy is something like this. So if your person has to log in and create an account, it wants me to sign up with Facebook, Apple, or Google, and then I have to go to my account and I have to log in and create an account. Most districts, that is now a violation of student privacy laws. Also, when I went to go sign up for this one, it made me put in my phone number. And there was another one that the only way to access was to put in my phone number. That is also a violation of privacy. So just keep that in mind. That technical one, I'm really not a fan of how they fix it. That's the only one I'm a little worried about. But again, if you have questions, let me know. But no, we had somebody last time actually contacted the publisher and got their like 200-page legal document for student data privacy. You do not have to do that. Okay. But again, if you have a question, let me know. So what do you do at the very end of this? So now you're going to submit your final rating. Now your final rating is the summative rating over everything that you have done. The course says that you're supposed to get a score of like 63 or above, but the numbers don't add up currently to that amount. So I don't know where they were coming up. I asked the state and they were like, oh, sorry, it was a mistake, but they didn't fix it. The biggest thing is that each material gets a final rating, and this is the most important part of this. Other than automatic vetoes, you need to be able to tell district leaders, parents, etc., what it's going to look like. So what I mean by this is that anybody, oops, I need to go to Midas. Anybody can access any of your evaluations. It's available on Midas. So if I click on this RIMS right here is where it's located at, this is the first thing people are going to see. And so it's going to be recommended primary, recommended limited, reviewed, not recommended. That's the first thing they see. So it's really, really important that we work really hard on this next one. So what do these reviews look like? And again, if you have any questions or if I'm going too fast, let me know. I'm trying to get you guys out quickly. So first, recommended primary. This is what we hope all your materials will be. This is the full package, ready to go. You may not be a fan of textbooks, but if I was a fan of textbooks, this is what I'm going to want. So substantial text. It cannot be just videos. It cannot just be, a paragraph. It needs to be substantial text. Think of a full textbook. It also needs to include supplemental activities, assessments, etc. Again, it can't just be a book. It has to include other things. Even if it's a textbook, a PDF, it needs to include a teacher version or a student version. Usually there are teacher tools associated with this. So whether it be grading, whether it be assigning assessments, but again, if you have a PDF, you kind of have to adjust that rule a little bit. Most of these will have student aids, such as text-to-speech, definitions, highlighting, etc. Again, if you have a PDF, if there's a good glossary, does it have little inlets of the definitions of different things? It does not have to be digital. A really good PDF textbook can be a primary. It's usually not, but it could be. And again, it must align with the state curriculum. If there's extras, it's usually okay unless it's too many extras. Like if you really have to dig for your standards, it's not going to work. But if there's multiple standards missing, then it's probably not going to be primary. A limited version it's mostly the full package. Like it's nice. I wish there was more, but I could use it in class. So there's substantial text. It's a textbook. Usually does not include supplemental materials. That's one of the big reasons why people will bump it down to a limited. It may have aids, but they may be present or not at all, or maybe they just don't work. So sometimes what can happen is you have a great textbook and you can't figure out the website. It's probably going to go down to limited. Most PDFs and singular textbooks will be limited unless they have substantial supplemental materials. Some of them will have like an online website. You can go and get those if you have a login. It complies with most or all of the state standards. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. And if it's a great resource that has everything for primary, but it does not align with the state standards, it is a limited resource. And I'll show you an example of the second. And again, if it's too confusing for a teacher to follow, or it does not even attempt to follow the standards, it is a limited. If it's too confusing, it's limited. So what does this look like? So this is a geography textbook that I evaluated a few years ago. You can see it has units based on areas of the world. Well, our state standards look like this. Our old state standards went United States, Latin America, whatever. But now we have AP Human Geography standards. So this isn't going to align. Like I could probably find stuff, but it's not really going to align for me. So maybe it's limited or maybe it's even a knockdown. While this one is a correctly aligned, you can see I can directly align my state standards and make it work. So standards is a big way. If it's a searchable one, it's going to be really hard. And again, if I can't find my standards, it's not going to be a primary resource. Now, this is where we start knocking them down. So we hope that everything is in the top two. And some of them are not made to be in the top two. Some of them are made to be in these other ones, but usually these are not as useful materials. So teacher resources, they're not ready for use in the classroom. What I mean by that is it's usually a collection of lesson plans, there's state and national standards, there's resource links. But me as a teacher, I have to go and work. I can't just pull it out. I can't just send students to a website. I have to do some work. I have to put in some work. Prep work is usually necessary. And again, if it's just a collection of activities, games, videos, etc., it's not a teacher resource because a teacher resource has lesson plans, standard alignments, etc. Versus a student resource, which are short-term activities. So these are usually extension activities, apps, games, online activities. Google people, you might think this is you, but it's not. If there are no lesson plans or teacher resources, it is likely a student resource. So when my students in government learn about gerrymandering, I send them to this website called Gerrymandering. It's a game. They gerrymander. There's 75 levels. My kids love it because they enjoy gerrymandering the population because it's a fun game. But there's no lesson plan. There's no teacher resources. There's no standard alignment. It's just a game. That is a student resource. Another example of a student resource is the thing on the left. So this was a textbook I reviewed in the fall. It's like a giant chapter book. You know, it doesn't look like this. It doesn't have words. It doesn't have structure. It's a chapter book. No, that would not be a very good teacher resource. It might be a student resource that you assign as an extra assignment to students. This is another example where, you know, this just has primary sources. So you click on it, it shows you primary sources, and I open it. Now we have one material from one group that is the Google Apps. This is the one that has like 25 things to review. And when you open it, it looks like a student resource. So this is a simulation where kids pretend that they are a cinema owner. But when you actually open it, there are instructor resources. So if it's an instructor resource, then it's going to be a teacher resource. If it's nothing like that and it was just a simulation, it's a student resource. Again, this is another example from my subject area. I wouldn't just send kids to this website because this has lesson plans and rubrics. This is a teacher resource. If it has teacher things, it's a teacher resource. This is also where potentially we get into the veto section. So we talked about the automatic vetoes before, but now we have reviewed but not recommended. These are vetoes. They're not automatic vetoes, but as you start looking at it, you're like, yeah, this is not going to work. If you click this, you are saying that is not recommended by veto. This is very important because this bans anybody from the state from using this material. Vetoes are things that violate ethics, law, etc., and also could harm students. It can also be material that is poorly designed, so it just is such an awful website that you can't use it. All vetoes are required to go to the Board of Education, and if a material is deemed this specific version cannot be used in any LEA in the state. That is a requirement. That's poorly worded English. So what does this look like? So this was a geography book that was assessed recently. This book had activities that weren't very pedagogically sound. So they were told, draw the Great Wall of China. And that was like their final assessment. Can you draw a picture of the Great Wall of China? Most of the videos were 10 years old. They had outdated information. One was about problems in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia did not exist and does not exist anymore. There were several activities that required Flash. So when you clicked on the link, they didn't work anymore. There's a lot of cultural stereotypes. So the only thing referred to that Africa had actually said in there, the only benefit Africa has had on the world is it provided slaves to the rest of the world. It also said America was the best country in the world. and everybody else was uncivilized. Now, this was National Geographic. This is very much a 2000s version of geography, but yeah, we can't have that. And again, if it negates certain things, so for example, it has no reference to religion, that's a really important part of geography around the world. This was a book I did a few years ago. So it opens it up, and the first thing it says is this person is a civil rights activist. He is the founder of this center, and this lesson is going to cover the 10 principles that he has created to uplift and empower anyone. This is obviously a biased material. We can't use this kind of stuff. This was a big deal last time. So this was one of my materials. This is my textbook, by the way, for my AP class. But it not only did not get a good review, it is currently the online version is banned in the state of Utah, which is funny because I have to use it for my AP for the textbook version. So that is because the supplemental materials had one activity was Trump a racist president? That is word for word the name of the activity. They also had, is building a border wall a racist policy? Again, this should automatically say we have a problem. The minimum amount of problems that can result in a veto is one. Just this one thing is a veto, regardless of the rest of the textbook. That's why my textbook can be used, but you can't use any supplemental materials because those are the issues that they had. Normal looking textbooks, just like this, it's required by College Board. I use this. This is one of the 9 requireds. May have hidden agendas. We don't know. Don't judge a book just by how pretty it looks. In my experience, the vast majority of these are going to come from controversial issues or supplemental materials. So thinking about your own subject, take a few seconds. What could be an unacceptable thing in your own subject? Go ahead and take a few seconds. And again, we're close to being done. We're only a few slides away. Okay, so I don't know what you guys have. Maybe you were blanking and you're like, everything is perfect in my subject. There is no controversy. Here are a couple that I thought of. And again, I'm not your subject, so maybe these are not good, but these are what I was thinking of. Okay. So for example, let's pretend that in order to learn about processing chickens in agriculture, it links to a video of them literally processing baby chicks and killing them. Probably not something appropriate that our students should be watching for. Maybe you're the fashion one and it has this picture, which if you don't know is from the Grammys. This is Kanye West's old wife. She filed for divorce after this. But she showed up to the Grammys completely nude, and I'm not showing you the other version. But if your textbook says, is this a good statement of fashion, showing up nude? Probably not appropriate for our textbooks. If you're in the manufacturing and your thing links to this guy getting his foot chopped off, probably not appropriate. This is the one you're going to see a lot more common. So this was a book that actually was used here in Utah. It was on a district's approved list. A teacher gave it to students as writing prompts in their English class, but these were the prompts that were coming up. So I'm looking at you Microsoft Word people. Maybe it says to practice using Word, fill out this prompt. These are probably not things that we should be allowing our students to be able to use in class. And so again, it's really important. Look at those supplemental materials, look at activities. That's usually where these come up. Now the not sampled section is only when we cannot access a work. And usually it should not be used if you run out of time. If you run out of time, we still have to sample it. Let me know as soon as possible if something does not get sampled. And I will let you know if you need to use this. Okay, we are going to do a little test here. This is, again, we're almost to the end, I promise you. So I'm going to show you some examples and you're going to decide one of these 6. I'll give you a hint. There are 6 things that you're looking at. There are 6 review options. They match. So take about 30-ish seconds. See if you can figure out which one these would each be. And again, it should probably be almost finished up. Hopefully. If you're only on question 1 or 2, you can let me know. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see if you got all the answers correct on here. So we're going to go ahead and start with A. So I marked this as a teacher resource. Lots of good lesson plans and ideas, but you have to put in some work. This resource could not be accessed even after we contacted it. That's not sampled. This one I put as not recommended. Now, again, it's not saying that writing about what president is the world's greatest hero is not a good essay. That could be a good essay. But if the source specifically says, please explain why President Obama is or was America's greatest hero, now we're starting to head into some bias, and that's just not going to be appropriate. Again, even if it's a viewpoint that you agree with, you can't have that in there. We have to be appropriate. This one I put as student resource. I actually had this one last year. It just is with a little activity, but it's a student resource. Primary, lots of good options, has a textbook, etc. And then limited, great textbook, but did not include all my standards. That's a really common one. So I put it as limited. Once you're done fully, you add some commentary. So this is an example of a commentary that I wrote last year on my commentary. Comments should explain in depth why you chose the rubric scores that you did. Publishers are given access to this as well as parents. You want an explanation. It doesn't have to be crazy long, but think like a good example of why you chose what you did on each rubric point. Make sure that it aligns with the rubric. So we sometimes have people give it a high score and then we'll heavily criticize it. It needs to align with your rubric. And again, if it's all threes, it's probably a primary. If it's twos, it's probably a limited or a student resource, etc. Anything lots of ones or zeros are probably going to be a not recommended version. Publishers receive your comments, so please be honest, but don't be rude. And also explain why you reduced their scores. They want to improve. Let them be able to improve. Because right now, for example, that textbook, my textbook, they're rewriting the whole thing. And so we want them to be able to do that. And again, work together to make good commentary. What I like to do in my Zoom reviews is I like to make a bulleted list on rims, and then I like to go back in and actually make a nice, pretty thing. But again, it should look nice. And again, there's one review per team. Just make sure everybody contributes. Don't forget, most materials per group of things. So again, if it's 5 things, but it's the same header, that takes about 1 to 1.5 hours individually to review. Make comments on rims, Google Docs, on paper, etc., so you can remember why you gave it the score that you did. Avoid publisher bias. Don't just assume that Pearson's going to be great because Pearson's been around for 100 years. Be careful of that. Don't judge a book by its cover. Just because it looks pretty does not mean it's a good book. Only judge based on the material, not the process to get to the material. Again, you will feel like you're pulling out teeth sometime. Just review the material, not the process. Surface level analysis is not good. In-depth analysis is better. Write good commentary that helps people and understand your review. It is really important. This is all public information. Do you want people to see what you wrote? Write good responses. And again, this is really important. And I used the wrong word, right? I'm sorry. If you feel that this is not the correct work for you, please let me know. Maybe in this experience, in this whole thing, you're like, this is way too much work. I'm going to be miserable. I hate it. It's better to drop than to wait until your teammates are mad at you. And this is what happened last time. There's a person that ghosted them. And so a teacher contacted their principal. Their principal brought them down to the main office and gave them like a really bad talking to. It is a better way to just relieve yourself from the process. I hope that you stay, but please let me know. Okay. Reviewer timeline. Hopefully you have done the pre-work. I'll reach out to you to see if you have. We are currently in week 1, which is to access the materials ASAP, begin reviewing. You can't do that yet because we don't have the rubrics, but as soon as I find out, I will let you know. So I would do through 1 for right now until you hear from me. Ask your teammates, when do you want to meet? When is your deadline? Is it next Friday? Do you all want to be done by Monday of next week? It is a quick review process though. We do have only 2 weeks to really review and talk. Week 2, you're going to attend a Zoom meeting with your teams. You're going to collaborate and enter the information into RIMS. That's the software system that you've been looking at. And then week 3 is when you finalize. Really, week 3 is a cleanup. So if you miss this deadline of week 2, we usually have a little bit of time to bleed into the next one. But again, you do need, it is a very quick process. That is something we've talked to them about. They are very big into this being a very short process. Um, but again, I was reviewing materials. It was due October 31st, and I was reviewing materials into mid-November because things were late, etc. So again, I know it's short. Hopefully we get access to the rubrics soon, especially if you're a group that has 5 materials to review, or you're the Google people. So again, working as a team to finish up, all members of this project need to work equally. You also need to review all materials. You cannot split up the work. So that doesn't mean you do this review, I'll do this review, and we'll say it's good. Everybody works on all materials. That is state law. It should become really clear through discussion if your partner did not do the work. If they didn't, let me know. We did have somebody last year that their contract was revoked. It was very, very clear they didn't do the work. They admitted they didn't do the work when they got called by the State Board of Education. Because this is a serious process. You can't just pass it off and say you can move on. If your plan is to do that, it's probably better to drop. You do need to meet via Zoom or in person. You cannot have email threads. If you need help via Zoom, let me know. If someone in your group is not pulling their weight or there's a conflict, let me know. Again, most of the time we have about a third or a quarter of the groups that have some sort of conflict I need to resolve. And again, if you need a third party to take a look, let me know and I will for free. I'm not reviewing anything that's a change, so I'm free to help you. This is a form that I will be working on filling out. There is a few of you that joined that I need to get you marked off. So if you joined late, if you will just put your name in the chat just so I can remember, so I can get you marked off. But this is what I submit to the state to prove that you worked. So please make sure that you are responding to emails, etc., so I can make sure to get you everything you need. And just as a quick reminder, don't forget your work is important. It does make an influence. Your work is appreciated. I appreciate how hard that you work. I know people, when publishers get angry, we appreciate your work. It's a hard job, but it is really rewarding. That's why I put here your work matters. If it wasn't for my review last fall, my own textbook that I use in AP, that is one of the 9 required textbooks by College Board, would not be making the changes they have if it wasn't for us. They basically contacted us and said after the state banned it, they were like, we had no idea somebody put that in. They let go the people who did. Apparently, it was like a big political thing that they had purposely put it in there. We do a lot of good work, and it's all because of you guys. Okay, so this is your chance for last minute Q&As. We did go 10 minutes over what I wanted. You can put them in the chat, you can unmute, but is there any questions I can resolve for you? My kids sound like they're having so much fun up there. Okay. So what we're gonna do is, so I have Blair and Stacy that are on. Let me just make sure that we have everybody marked off on here that attended. Okay, Stacy. All right. If you, oops, that's not correct. If your name is not marked off on here, let me know now. Unmute. Let me know. Okay. I'm gonna stay on for a couple of minutes just in case anybody does not feel comfortable speaking out to the full group. Look from an email from me. I'm gonna ask you these questions. What have you and have you not done? You can feel free to respond to me no, and then take a couple of days, but they do want all of this done by Wednesday, and then hopefully getting into the materials. I'm gonna fix that later. Don't forget, I do appreciate you. If you sleep on it and you're like, this is not gonna work for me, just let me know and I can work with the state. I'm very appreciative of everything everybody does in here, and I hope that we do an awesome job. So feel free to hop off unless you have a question. Thank you guys so much. Where did you get the emails? So that is actually a good question. So in your, oops, USBE. So this is in the Canvas course, which they asked us to give them feedback on the Canvas course, and I gave them a bunch of feedback, and they did not fix anything. I gave them feedback. I reviewed this thing for 2 hours and nothing changed. But this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So When you get to the very, 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 very bottom of the module, it says right here, team leader and reviewer assignment. If you click on this, it's gonna hop into it's gonna hop into a spreadsheet. And then over here on the right is all of the emails. So you can see down here, we are team blue. I have no idea, by the way, what the red means. Maybe you do if you're still on here. But these are all of the different reviewers that are on here. This is all of their names. Oh, look, they deleted the person who quit. So yes, so we should be good now. But again, I don't really know what the reds mean. But yeah, this is where you access it. So if you just go on Canvas. Sorry, my husband's asking if we can put the baby to bed. All right. Anything else? Any other questions? If not, feel free to hop off and I'll assume you're good to go. Okay, and now it's just me. All right. Let's